Parkour.
Hello.
Okay, there's a camera. Hello, Internet.
Hello,
Tell them
Internet.
who you are.
My name is Andy Day.
Yeah.
I've been involved with parkour, photographing, occasionally practicing, doing a lot of building and climbing since 2003.
2003, yeah. That's what I think it's really interesting for me. Because, like you said, we met on the forum, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And you said you were like inside and outside the parkour community for like quite a while now. Like for 14 years now.
Yeah. And when I say inside and outside, I don't mean for a while I was inside and then I was outside. I mean, I see myself as sometimes being inside and sometimes being outside and being both of those things at the same time.
Yeah. So, in your presentation about radical inclusivity, I really liked the part that you have a part on your computer where you, what did you say, like where you write that what makes you really angry about the parkour community. Can you give me an example?
Well,
or some examples?
No, I can't.
Really
It's not just the parkour community. It's things in general, but a lot of my time is spent thinking or talking about the parkour community. But an example, GQ magazine published a series of photographs and an accompanying article where they took 3 elite level climbers out to the desert, put them in some ridiculously expensive designer clothes and photographed them. And it wasn't enough that they just had these 3 models wearing all of these clothes. But they had to just have some women along as well. And the women were doing nothing but watching these guys climbing and wearing bikinis.
Yeah.
And it was just really ill-conceived. It was like 3 elite climbers and some hot friends. I think they were described literally as hot friends. So basically, female flesh was shoehorned into this photo shoot as an accompaniment to male bravado and accomplishment. Because, you know, readers of GQ magazine can't get through a short article about climbing without some tits, naked, basically. I mean, there wasn't nudity; it was all partial nudity, but it was just so. I mean, that then. So all of the kind of outrage, that initial kind of "fuck's sake, this is shit," kind of goes into this document, and from there you kind of calm down. And build on it, and kind of hopefully turn it into something a little more intelligent. You kind of look at why it made you angry, and try and think intelligently, and kind of process those thoughts, and look at the reasons, and just give it some coherency, basically, as opposed to this emotional response.
Yes.
So it's useful to have that initial outpouring, and usually that then turns into something else.
About this nakedness, you know Jan Hoyer, the boulderer. Like he was once on a German television show, a comedy show, and it was about climbing and just to, he was climbing, and then he should show some finger climb ups, you know, and then he put out his T-shirt. And he said he has to put out his T-shirt for his sponsor, and then he has to do it like naked, and then he had to do the. It was so funny, and there were afterwards some posters where people were making fun of it, like if you have to put out your shirt because it's for your sponsor.
Yeah.
And I think he experienced the same, like somehow money and I don't know what.
Well, I mean, we think of parkour and climbing as being quite progressive kind of social groups, and yet there was a really good climber just 2-3 weeks ago who said that women are doing no favors for themselves by choosing to dress the way that they dress. Which kind of is slut-shaming. It's men still telling women how they should dress.
Do you know this interview thing on YouTube where some pro male athletes get the same question, like female, like what's your dress like?
Yeah, give us a twirl.
Yeah. It was pretty ridiculous and really well thought, you know.
Yeah.
Like I like it. Basically, I talked to Traceurs, like pure Traceurs. But first I want to make do we talk the same language? Like, my question is, what is parkour?
Oh, fuck. I hate that question. I kind of feel like I've been, like, I don't know, I feel like that question was important 10 years ago. I don't think that question's really important anymore. I mean, for me, rather than answering your question, what I'd like to talk about instead is how the vagueness of its definition and the kind of weirdness of the word itself is actually really useful.
I really feel confused.
Why?
Because things changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it does evolve. It's organic. It's emergent.
Yeah.
You know, what parkour means today isn't what it meant 10 years ago. Maybe it means something different now than it did 1 year ago, and that's because the community changes, ideas change, things evolve.
Yeah.
You know, the parkour that we're doing today is so vastly different from what Jan was doing. You know, dangling his mates off the top of the Dame du Lac. You know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
But you know, I think part of parkour's charm is this indeterminacy, because it's vague, woolly. Yeah. It's kind of shifting, and occasionally
it's
not.
There's not a rule book, you know. Like
no, and that kind of gives it this freedom to be what it wants to be, as opposed to being this thing that society thinks it is, or has decided that it is. Yeah. So we think of traditional established sports, football, tennis. Yeah. They have rules, they have regulations, they have formats, they have standards, they have governing bodies, they have, you know, all manner of stuff. Whereas parkour is fluid, it's flexible. It's indeterminate. It can be whatever it wants to be, whenever it wants to be. And yeah, that's a point of frustration, because people argue about what that term can mean. But it actually means that this is going to sound a bit crazy, but it kind of helps parkour to resist some of the processes and the logic of late capitalism. So capitalism tends to co-opt stuff. It becomes formalized, it becomes fixed, and it loses really that thing that's it loses that thing that to a degree makes it special. It becomes commercial. It becomes parkour. The word doesn't make any sense. When you hear non-parkour people use the word parkour, it just makes you go, "Oh, you sound like an idiot." Traceur is the worst word in the world. It's like, yeah, we're traceurs. Sorry. We sound ridiculous when we use that word.
Yes, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. But I never
thought about this.
I love that it sounds ridiculous, because
I never said that I'm a traceur to a non parkour practitioner. Yeah, it's just because we are traceur. Yeah, and then we go.
So
okay, I never.
And the word parkour sounds really strange in other people's mouths. Don't you think? If a TV presenter says, "And now we're going to talk about parkour," and they don't really know how to say it. And
okay, now I know what you mean. Yeah,
it's keeping parkour at this like nice distance from. I mean, parkour is becoming mainstream. It is entering, you know, the zeitgeist. It's becoming part of public consciousness. But at the same time, this weirdness that it has with the words and the name. Is it art de déplacement? Is it free running? Is it parkour? Is it all these other things? Kind of like that. It's
this diversity, and it's not grabbable. I don't know if it's a word, but
that's very good. Okay. Yeah, that's
what I feel like if I think about your thoughts. The reason for this is that parkour is so based on obstacles, like your surroundings, and surroundings change all the time. Like we can do it here, we can do it there, we can do it in France, we can do it everywhere, like in the mountains. And so it changed, and especially in the beginning where there was less internet, I think, parkour grew in a local environment. So in England, in 2008, I was the first time in England. And like Phil Doyle, they were doing crazy lâchers. I never thought about the possibility of doing stuff like this, because it was locally, you know, because the reason for this is that you have scaffoldings that are fixed. In Germany, it's efficient. You have those obstacles. You set them together. It's pretty fast up, pretty fast down. But it was like this. And then, so for me, like, because of this obstacle thing, it's so different everywhere you go. And now in Denmark, they do different kind of parkour, because they build stuff for parkour, and so their style changes. Can you relate to this in some kind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everywhere I go, you see a different flavour. You see a different emphasis, whether it's in the movement or in the attitude. And we think of parkour. I mean, the parkour community is described as fragmented, and we see that fragmentation and that looseness as a bit of a problem sometimes. But actually, I think that gives our community a huge amount of strength.
Yeah.
Because what's the incentive to travel to different places if what they're doing is exactly the same, on the same stuff? It's like
football. If you play football in Rio de Janeiro,
exactly. If we had the exact same parkour park built in 200 cities around the world, would you travel to those cities? No, you wouldn't. And it's not just to find the different. It's not just to find the different obstacles. It's to find the different mentalities, to find the different cultures. And this is what I love about parkour. It's transnational. It's it's a product of globalization. Globalization brings its own problems in terms of inclusion, exclusion. Nationalisms, of flows of money, of increased divide between rich and poor, and a global elite and whatever. But globalism also brings an attitude, certainly in our generation, of transnationalism, by which I mean you don't see national borders as points of difference that divide people, but they're points of distinction that provide opportunities. These borders are... we talk of it's a bit of a cliche within the world of parkour. You don't see obstacles, you see opportunities. Yeah. It's the same with international boundaries as well. And for me, I've seen this most in the relationship between the Serbian and Croatian communities.
Like yesterday, we were talking to Sasha, and it was pretty.
And what, Sasha, Boki, Mirko, and a few of the other guys from those communities, I think the Serbian and Croatian communities are two of the most important parkour communities in the world, if not the most important parkour communities in the world, because they are going in the face of thousands of years of tribal, ethnic, religious, national divisions that have
and they're connecting through a tool.
They're not free of that history. They're taking that history on board. They feel it, but they go, do you know what? Let's train.
And we, in the end, I said it yesterday. Like, every NGO, like political worker, would dream about a project like this. If they would start this, and it just, it's a natural thing.
And that's it. That's a natural thing. It's not like, right, we're a parkour community. They're a parkour community. We should build something together.
We have to build it.
It's not. It's just like, they're just over there. They speak the same language. We can go there. We can train together. Let's have a great time. It's not like, maybe we can build some bridges. It's just like, fuck bridges, fuck divisions. Let's jump.
That's really interesting. But about the obstacle thing, like, what do you think about the idea to build a boulder gym in Fontainebleau?
It has its place. I don't have any objection to that. I mean, there's two now, I think, in Fontainebleau. Where, there's there's two, at least two. I think. I forget. There's Blocage, which is this tiny gym near Arbonne, I think, and then there's the new one, which I don't really know anything about, which is where the French national team train. But it rains a lot in Fontainebleau. If you talk to the Finnish guys, they'll spend a lot of their winter indoors. They will train outdoors, of course. So a lot of the Finnish guys who do parkour will actually climb a lot over the winter because there's a nice warm gym that serves coffee and everything else. So
there's a toilet. And you don't have to
exactly. But you know what? I mean, climbing indoors is becoming its sport in its own right, but for just as many people, climbing indoors will never be will never surpass climbing outdoors.
Yeah, I would like to find an old climber who knew the difference, like in the beginning, like in the 70s or whatever, that he went outdoors. And then, it's different. Like, I don't have to tell you, like, climbing outdoors is different than climbing indoors. Well, I know it myself, no?
Yeah. No one in the 70s was climbing indoors.
Yeah, why?
It didn't
How?
Well, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
But, having climbing gyms in Fontainebleau, if anything, it's going to protect the rock, because there's only going to be more and more climbers.
Yeah.
And when it rains, sandstone, if you climb on it, it falls apart. Yeah. So if you keep those climbers indoors on rainy days, then it's actually doing the forest a bit of a favour.
Interesting, argument, yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't
know. What about parkour parks then? What do you think about them? We had indoor facilities, parkour parks outdoors. What do you think about them?
From your, I personally photographing. I mean, my interest primarily is photography. Photographing on stuff is really boring.
It's boring, huh?
Yeah.
From a photographic view,
from a photographic viewpoint,
yeah.
This is different. I mean, if it's outdoors, that's at least, you know, something. But if it's indoors, it's really hard work. I find it really uninspiring. And, you know, the movements are great. Like the amount of stuff you can pack into one area, obviously. And, you know, I don't object to parkour parks in the slightest, but in terms of my
visual
interest, the visual stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. I came over here for some work. When I say here, I mean Denmark. I was here working for Street Movement, photographing 2 of their new indoor parkour training facilities at 2, I want to say, efterskoler. Mm-hmm. So 2 high schools, effectively, that now have purpose-built parkour training facilities. And they are absolutely beautiful. Mm-hmm. And but shooting in them was
hard work,
really, really hard work. I mean, I'm really pleased with the images. I think we've got some great stuff. But you know, shooting with lights, we're shooting with 3 strobes. That was really tough. It's just slow. And then all of the techniques that you use when you're shooting architecture, they don't really count for much when you then try and use those same tricks indoors, unfortunately, which is really frustrating. But yeah, I mean,
in your speech you said like parkour was radical 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah, and it still is. I mean, like when I speak, I'm often quite provocative, like deliberately kind of like trying to poke people to think.
Do you also think like because it was so radical, because it was new to move like in the city, this also made it visibly attractive?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I was kind of trying to say was that parkour was radical 15 years ago because no one was doing it and because it hadn't been commercially co-opted. Mm-hmm. Like in that it hadn't entered the mainstream, it hadn't been used for adverts, it hadn't been institutionalized, so there wasn't like teaching in schools or anything. It was just this new thing that was kind of happening in the city, you know, in the same way that skateboarding 50s, 60s, 70s was pretty radical. It was, and then of course slowly over time, bigger and bigger companies. And now it's kind of it's mainstream but not mainstream, I guess. In that, you know, the point I kind of finally got around to the other day in the paper was to say that with the more kind of edgy stuff, late capitalism gives it the impression that it's transgressive, but at the same time, kind of you are just conforming with that transgression. It's transgression as a lifestyle choice by a privileged number of people.
White middle class,
so you know,
in their 20s, 30s.
Exactly. You know, you think, oh, trespassing's like illegal. Are you actually going to get into trouble for it? No, probably not. Very few people will.
It feels a little bit.
If you are white and middle class and carrying a nice camera, you'll probably get away with it.
That's funny. I like this idea. About this camera thing, like you also were talking about like a lifestyle sport is about you, and I was thinking about all this selfie stuff and so about like gathering likes. Like this is happening in parkour. It also happens with me. You know, if I publish something. I'm addicted to likes.
We all are. I mean, I have an Instagram account, and you know, it's nice to see people liking my work. I feel a sense of validation for the projects that I work on. I wish I had more validation because I work really hard, and it'd be nice to see that work go further and for people to understand it. But in the talk that I gave, I was talking about individualism, and individualism isn't something that's new. It's something that's being talked about more and more because we're kind of heading to, I guess, increasing levels of individualism with this like intense study of the self, both in terms of producing imagery, but also this way of curating. Like it's like you're a museum piece. You're like choosing very selective parts that you put out there, and then seeing the response. You're curating and creating an identity of yourself at an increasingly heightened level. Like there's more intensity, there's more time given over to it, not just in terms of deciding what images go into your Facebook, Instagram, whatever, but also your lifestyle choices, and this goes back ages. I mean, like historically, you know, in terms of what clothes you wear, which people you spend your time with, what activities you undertake, So with the emergence of the middle class over the last 2 centuries, you have the invention of leisure. Leisure becomes this way of creating an identity that is outside of your work. So previously, your work would pretty much determine who and what you are.
Like you say, like
now,
before you work, you sleep, and then you work.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
It.
But now
you have to fulfill your.
Yeah, exactly. So there's especially with lifestyle sports, it's about going on a personal adventure, seeking validation, autonomy, a sense of authenticity.
But also, I also have the impression, like, also to find your perfect job, like you have to find your, like, yourself in your job as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's, so I had a long time like finding, making myself like under pressure, because like I didn't knew what I want to do, and if I look around, so many people have the question like, what do I want to do?
Yeah,
because they have to define themselves through their work.
Yeah, and there's it's interesting. So with this growth of leisure and this identification through leisure, there's also this the emergence of the notion of creativity. And creativity, we think of this nice fluffy thing, but it's actually deployed commercially through capitalism as a strategy, as a mechanism. So now kind of people see themselves as being, achieve fulfillment, they have to work somehow creatively. There has to be creativity in their work. And to a degree with that, there is what's called precarity or precariousness. Which
what does it mean?
So this is the idea that it's worth having this constantly threatened existence of being a self-employed creative person. It's kind of become trendy to always be kind of, flogging yourself like at the edge of, poverty to be a creative almost. So we have this precarity has become a phenomenon of late capitalism, of never feeling, 50 years ago you would start a job and you'd be in that job for 25 years. Now it's just constantly shuttling between these different professionalisms, I guess.
Yeah, I hope this talk you gave, I really wrote so many things, like, I hope it will somehow publish,
Well, I will follow it up, and I don't think none of the thoughts in that paper are necessarily they're not new ideas. I'm drawing on the work.
Collecting. And
I'm working on the work of Julie Angel, Theo Condinis, Ollie Mould, Alex Pavlotsky, Belinda Wheaton. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, but he's written this fantastic paper on urban exploration. And how it's just become completely co-opted. You have sock sponsors. It's people thinking they're cool, but it's actually just really, really commercial. So that was an inspiration. But like I say, Alex Pavlotsky's been talking about traditionalists and iconoclasts, people breaking the mold of what it means to be cool, I guess. There's always a next generation that's going to come along and try and subvert the previous generation. So
one of the other topics I want to talk about is I just make a hard cut here, like, because our thoughts or your thoughts, they went
it's
like
fine.
I asked this a lot of people about parkour competitions. There's a shift. There are parkour competitions now. How do you relate to them, or what do you think about them, like from the more external position?
I keep an open mind. I talked the other day about masculinity and competitions, like a really masculine aspect of, and with our follow-up discussion, we kind of realised that with every choice that we make, we are including some people and excluding others. And it's what do you do to balance one exclusion with another inclusion? So, if your demographic is predominantly white middle-class teenagers, as a parkour organisation, what are you doing to diversify? If you're then creating a women-only class, obviously you're trying to be more inclusive, but at the same time you're excluding. And there's only so far you can push this, because, is an advanced class deliberately excluding beginners? Well, yes it is, but there's kind of a purpose to that. So it's not that exclusivity bad, inclusivity good. It's kind of trying to get this balance. And if we go down the road of competition, we still have to make sure we create the space and make sure that we maintain this idea that parkour is not about competition. So, you know, I don't necessarily like the idea of competition, but I see its inevitability, and I can totally understand why people want to compete.
It's inevitability.
Inevitability. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Whether we like it or not, however much you want it not to, it's going to happen. And you know, some of the competitions are amazing. You know, I look at the speed competitions, North American parkour, and
you think it's amazing?
Yeah, I think they're a great concept. I think, but not
it crushes my heart.
Well,
it crushes my heart because
the difficulty is that parkour attracts so many people because there are no rules and there is no competition. And I think, however much you love competition, please don't lose sight of the fact parkour is what it is and draws in such a diverse range of people because there is not a competitive element to it. It's about a personal journey. And no, of course, the competition is not going to change a person's personal journey, but it changes it's going to change the culture of parkour. And if you change the culture of parkour, you change its appeal. You change who takes part.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a big shift, and I think
I'm not really worried, but
I think the people who are pioneering and pushing forward with the competitions, I hope they don't lose sight of the fact that what they're doing can potentially undermine the hard work of a lot of other people. I think that's the difficulty.
Interesting that you like the idea of North American competition. In a way, it's attractive about the movement wise, but
do you know what? I don't like the concept of competition. I don't like the celebration of the individual. I don't like the idolization of the winner. But I do like seeing people really trying to push themselves over these obstacle courses. I think as a visual thing, I'm just like, wow. And I love seeing the progression. And you can't argue with the fact that competition, you know, has its own way of pushing progression.
For me, I had this moment, like I'm pretty old school about this, or pretty like, you know, but when I saw this chase tag thing, I really was like, interesting. I like to see this, but on the other side, I don't like to see this. You know, like
I think we're probably in the same boat there. Like, we have a similar attitude there. Like the culture of competition, I find not worrying, not disturbing. I just fear that it shifts the culture of parkour away from something that's really all-embracing to something that's more exclusive.
Yeah.
You know,
like exclusive.
It's more elitist.
It will be more elitist. Yeah.
Potentially. But like I say, it is inevitable. It is going to go that way.
Yeah.
You know,
it is. It's happening. You know.
Whoever, like, you know, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But if and when the FIG thing falls apart, and if and when our own international body emerges, then whoever's in charge of that, it will go towards Olympic format.
Would you make pictures on the Olympics?
No, I don't think so.
You get a lot of money.
I don't. If I wanted to make money, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah?
No.
Okay.
No. There's I mean, people say, oh, why don't you take photographs of climbing? It's like, well, there's no money in climbing photography. And they're like, well, is there money in parkour photography? Like, no, not really. Yeah.
But you can travel the world. Oh, why do you do this then? Why do you do this then?
Oh, the people, the adventures, the narcissism.
Yeah?
No, I'm joking. Well, no, I'm joking. No, I don't know, really. It's... it's not something I ever thought I would... Like, I didn't take my first parkour picture, having, at the time, never taken a parkour photograph before, and thought, I want to be a photographer, or I want to be a parkour photographer. So I think this is kind of what's happening in the absence of knowing what to do with life. And I get to go, you know, earlier this year I spent 8 consecutive nights in 8 different countries. You know, and I've been to some amazing places like Japan, Nicaragua, India, all across the Balkans. Yeah. Some really, really amazing places. Met some just some of the best people you could ever hope to meet.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, and I find it challenging. I find it incredibly rewarding. And
I know exactly what you mean. Like this money thing. Like we were talking on the table. Like for lunch. Like money is nice, but there are other payments somehow. Yeah. There are just other payments, and like for me personally, parkour changed a lot because I was pretty like at some point I wanted to be the best. I want to make this show real, blah blah, and then but then I realized, okay, it's not going to be me. I have to admit this, and then I really like started to breathe parkour. And then I enjoyed like traveling here. It's not because of the training, because of the people. I want to talk to many people, and I really like had many times.
Stay.
When is it going?
5 minutes.
It started. I saw it 1:15.
Starts at 2.
Okay, so I'll be there in 2 minutes. In 5 minutes.
Okay.
Nice.
The bar.
Thanks.
Cool.
Okay. Some stupid questions in the end.
Go.
Bookie helped me to get them. What's your favorite tracer?
What is or who is?
Who is? Yeah.
Who is?
Who's your favorite tracer?
Ah, fuck. In terms of movement, personality, Thomas Kurdik.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You spent some time with him, huh?
Yeah, a lot of time with Thomas.
Yeah. Why is he the best?
Because.
Or your favorite tracer?
He's just one. He's not even my favourite tracer. He's probably one of my favourite people, other than my girlfriend, obviously. He has a way of asking you questions that don't just make you think; they kind of make you feel. Like if he's asking you why you aren't doing what he thinks you should be doing, it doesn't just talk to your brain; it kind of talks to your soul. Mm-hmm. Like there's something about the way he asks you to do something that's just like, I don't know, really motivating and really challenging.
I experienced
like
this.
He's a difficult person.
Yeah.
He's a challenging person sometimes, and people find his attitude frustrating, and some people don't like it at all. But
I like the calmness in his. Yeah. He's not pushing you.
Yeah.
He's doing some magic. He did it with Samsung.
Well, he does do magic as well, so that also makes for some entertainment.
And who's the best tracer? We are in the part of stupid questions.
Stupid questions.
Come on.
Who's the best? I'm the best.
Okay, best.
I'm not the best.
Can you do a backflip?
No.
What are your favorite shoes? How long do you train?
My slippers. I've got
those fucked up flip-flops?
No, the flip-flops were only €3. I have very low expectations for them. No, I have a pair of North Face slippers. They've got this really thick plastic bottom, and they're down. Yeah. They're down, filled with feathers. They're for Everest Base Camp. They're amazing.
Okay, and why do people know you?
Hopefully because I take amazing photographs, but also I expect because I'm a bit of a dick.
So, my last question from Blake. Why are you such an asshole?
Huh.
It's from Blake.
No, it's a good question. Why am I such an asshole? I guess I have to blame my parents. Really.
You can lay down if you want.
No. Why am I such an asshole? I mean, there's two levels to that. Like, personally, Blake is also an asshole, so we're just kind of constantly trying to outdo each other's assholery. But the other answer to that is that I think criticism and cynicism's really healthy. Mm-hmm. I think without criticism, people will have it too easy. Mm-hmm. People should be called out.
Yeah, like Thomas.
And Yeah, but I mean, you know, some of the commercial aspects that I get really critical about, like when some parkour competition was sponsored by an online casino. I was just like, come on, guys.
Oh yeah,
seriously.
I remember.
Seriously, and they're like, oh, you just
Was
criticize.
it the Swedish?
Yeah, it was the Swedish guy, and they were like, oh, you're just criticizing. I'm like, of course I'm fucking criticizing. It's like, oh, it's easy to criticize. I'm like, yeah, it's easy to make shit decisions. Like, I tell you what, here's the deal. You keep making shit decisions, I'll keep criticizing.
Like sending some top climbers in the desert and put some women to it, yeah?
There you go.
Andy, thanks for the talk.
You're welcome. Enjoyed that.
Cool.